Once again, good evening. My name is Tony Sias, President and CEO of Karamu House, America's oldest African-American theater, celebrating 104 years. It is a great honor to host the Anisfield-Wolf Book Award Cleveland Book Week, celebrating the brilliant Mr. Russell Atkins and his vast contribution to the world of poetry, who happens to be in the theater. Let's give him a hearty round. It's great to have you back at home at Karamu House, Mr. Atkins. We have a few special guests in the theater this evening, and it's the students from the West Side Community House Sisterhood Program with Miss Allie Black. Where are the young people? And finally, thank you, Karen Long and Carol Pagel from the Cleveland State University Poetry Center for partnering with Karamu for this special evening and event. Carol, welcome to the stage. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hello, good evening. It's really wonderful to see such a large crowd here. For those of you who don't know, my name is Carol Pagel, and I'm the director of the CSU Poetry Center. I'm delighted to welcome you here this evening for a celebration of World Did Too Much, the selected poetry of Russell Atkins, cover above. Before we begin, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Leila Chatti from the Karamu House, as well as Karen Long and Stephanie Thompson from the Anisfield-Wolf Book Award. We're grateful to be included in this year's Cleveland Book Week and hope to see you at the other literary programs scheduled for this week. I'd also like to thank Hillary Plum and the staff of the CSU Poetry Center for their contributions to both the book and the evening, and all of the readers who are joining us tonight from near and far to celebrate Atkins's work. Those readers are Kevin Prufer, Leila Chatti, Daniel Gray-Kontar, Robert E. McDonough, Siaara Freeman, Julie Patton, Allie Black, Phil Metris, and Janice Lowe. And finally, I'd once again like to thank Russell Atkins himself for being here tonight and for his profound contributions to American poetry and drama. Russell Atkins is a poet, playwright, composer, theorist, and editor, born in Cleveland in 1926. In 1950, he co-founded Freelance, the Black avant-garde publishing house and literary journal, whose first issue contained an introduction by Langston Hughes, and where his essay on the theory of psychovisualism first appeared. Atkins's full-length collection of poetry, Here in The, was published by the Cleveland State University Poetry Center in 1975, and his chapbooks include A Podium Presentation, Phenomena, Objects, Objects 2, Heretofore, The Nail to be Set to Music, and Whichever. He's written verse plays including The Abortionist and The Corpse, and he ran poetry workshops right here at the Karamu House for many years. Atkins received an honorary doctorate from CSU in 1976, an Ohio Arts Council Creative Writing Fellowship in 1978, and a Poets League of Greater Cleveland Lifetime Literary Achievement Award in 1997. In 2017, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Cleveland Arts Prize at the age of 91, and the Cleveland State University Poetry Center is thrilled to once again have had the opportunity to publish his work with World Did Too Much, a comprehensive collection of Atkins's work, including more than 100 poems, 2 poetry dramas, and a manifesto edited by Kevin Prufer and Robert McDonough with a foreword by Janice Lowe. Russell Atkins's work has been called modernist, concrete, avant-garde, elliptical, experimental, and disruptive, each descriptor feeling apt, and yet none alone doing justice to the strange range and baffling, dazzling melodic magic of his work. Atkins's poems are sites of linguistic stitching, riffs on quotidian situations, and naughty, tangled, exploratory, typographically radical performances of the fiery relationship between visual and oral composition. Above all, Atkins's poems prioritize the aesthetic and the idiosyncratic. One has a sense of being led by the ear into a space of sonic logic and loom-strung lines. Atkins writes in a manifesto included at the beginning of World Did Too Much. Art does not have to convince. Its aim is largely aesthetic, not essentially informative or problem-solving or trying to tell anyone anything. Therefore, beauty, being its own value, is to be defined only by the artist as he immerses himself in the bringing into existence as creativity process. Nothing the artist does is obligated to work for or communicate with an audience. It is a phenomenalism about which the audience is relatively free. One could almost weep at this reminder of artistic freedom, both for the maker and the audience, a philosophy and ethos that Atkins has inhabited his whole life, and perhaps a necessary, prescient strategy for contemporary practice. Atkins insists that it is not the artist's role to serve, to please, to be literally understood, or even to communicate. Poetry can be multifaceted, magnificent, and even inconceivable. It can be married to music over meaning, play over a too serious preciousness, and the intellect over an expected series of images. Atkins is a poet as inclined to dwell on the visual sensation of a murmur of bird-like M's soaring across the page's wind, as he is to invoke the touching quality of gloom filtering through a Cleveland garden. Atkins writes about his lifelong home of Cleveland often. Of Lake Erie, the cemeteries, the storms, the square, the streets, and the people, and so it comes as no surprise that he's also served as a mentor, friend, and correspondent to so many local artists, and that his legacy is evident in the community of writers and readers here to celebrate him tonight. His work may be known throughout the world, but his presence is most cherished in this city, where he's resided for the better part of a century. This book, World Did Too Much, represents as much of a collection of Atkins's work as seemed possible to gather in one place. And we have Kevin Prufer, Robert McDonough, Julie Patton, Arcey Harton, Janice Lowe, Karen Seeger, Craig Dworkin, Diane Kendig, and a host of other poets and friends to thank for doing the detective work necessary to make this book and for supporting Atkins's art with joy, love, and care for many decades. There's more to say about Atkins's work, and I hope that you join me over the next weeks and months and years in saying it. But for now, I'll point you to our program, which includes bios of our readers in the order in which they'll perform this evening. And I'll invite our first reader, Kevin Prufer, to the stage.
I actually want to thank Carol and the whole staff at Cleveland State University Poetry Center for not just this book, but just decades of great books. And I want to thank Russell Atkins for writing this just unparalleled and unimitatable poetry, and verse drama, and music theory, and everything else. I know no one writes or edits alone, and one of the joys of working on this book has been getting to know a little bit about the community that Russell has had his whole life, the people who have listened to him and read his work and learned from him. With that in mind, I wanted to say one little businessy thing, and I'm going to read 3 of his poems. The businessy thing is that right now we're in a kind of conversation with Callaloo, the literary journal of African American culture, and they are hoping to do a special issue devoted entirely to Russell's work. So that's amazing. And it seems like I'm never going to be in a position to stand in front of a whole room full of Russell Atkins fans. So again, so those of you who are in this room who knew him or know him, who have worked with him, or have benefited especially from him, who might be interested in contributing to this with some writing or being interviewed for it, I would love to just hear from you. I'm really just in the gathering information stage. Robert and I, but catch me afterwards, I'll stick around. Now I'm going to read 3 poems. I grew up in Cleveland, and I feel like I'm back in Cleveland when I read this poem. It's called Lakefront Cleveland. So thunders sea, it gathers strengths, summoned, ascends, huged up, then softs. Curls up about rocks, up curls about thick, about bold, curls up about it, then dangerous, soft. Sea gathers strength, summoned, ascends, uphuged over whatever's round, crashes, curls up about rock, up curls about, at bold, abruptly, curls about it, softs, dangerous, so oft, too soft almost, summoned, ascends, uphuged, crashes, curls up about rock, soft, furious, but soft, too soft, whist almost. Womb whamming everywhere, it gathers strength, summoned, ascends, huged up, splash about of bold, up curls about rock, rock about impetuous, curls, curls up about soft, dangerously, too soft, with a shudder. And here's a mean little poem. It's got all these parentheticals, and they seem to bounce between what somebody's perhaps saying and what they're perhaps thinking. It's on page 149 if you got the book. I'm going to go like this when we're in parentheses. I don't know much about quotation marks, go like that. I don't know. On seeing Cynthia again. Ah, Cynthia it is. Was, I should say, was it is. Cynthia, Cynthia, how have you been? How she has, alas, is seen. Has been, I should say. Still beautiful? Still beautiful. Let me describe her. Think of a horse. That's Cynthia. Horse? No, worse. Cynthia, I have thought of you, and I have thought of what could have become of you. What has become of her? I would say nothing has. Nothing, of course, becomes her. Remember, Cynthia, remember the times of old? She cannot place of old. I know, Cynthia, yes, you look as young can be. A baby? You lucky, 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 having a baby's the most to say. Commonplace as day. I certainly shall have to come and see it. Where do you stay? Well, wherever she may she be kept there and off the thoroughfare. Cynthia, you look as you did once by St. Vincent's Brook. You have not changed at all. How is matrimony? Of course, milk and honey. Cynthia, it has been exquisite seeing you. Give my few friends my love. That is, if I consent enough. Goodbye. Don't let the baby catch anything and die. And the last one's just a really short one. But it has, I think, one of my favorite images in all of Russell Atkins' work. It's called School Demolition. School demolition. Shot through the windows? Murdered? So silently about the rooms, the autopsy begins. The moon coroner working late. Thank you. The next reader is Leila Chatti.
Hi, this is great. I'm very excited about this. I have not lived in Cleveland my whole life. I'm a recent transplant, a year now, but I love Cleveland. I love Cleveland. So I might be a rest of my life Cleveland. Idle. Snow brings restraint and takes you by the arm. Snow's religious, morals over the landscape, relaxes with a minister's smile and its hands folded across a great belly. Unlike authority elsewhere, snow will not keep a pair of handcuffs. Snow hates the body and fashion. That's the truth. The lost scarf. A cursing thunder of gloom came across then an hysteria of rain after. Up from below, a shuddering, gigantic surge. The stark, wrapped up whole of an evening of the fall. I wore a dirtied, restless scarf. Sentiment, though, loved it. Wind reaching out of that garden of forever. That half of hollowed of the fall. Got it and shredded it, spectered it through the hideous blur, agonized it on the dead, wrestled lawn, tortured it against, convolved it with. It then disappeared by the tomb of the Romes. It had hung among souvenirs, lately been of occasions, the memories of which I was fond. I sought it, the loved, over, about, beside, soft, treaded the coffins. On the Fine Arts Garden, Cleveland. The park's beautiful, really. Something so serious about it, serene and gloomy, mildly touching all things softly, and pouring with mellows the silver fountain. Silent figures move reposefully into the living shadows, and then the golden lamps, the while slowly filtering. And I'll read one last one, World Did Too Much, irritable song. Bus hollows on, of back windows, a width where oxygen gusted, crosswise as a neglect, a joyous foregone of seats, the while of beer cans jousted about the floors rubbished, and the drivers on the last run, as if fatal alone. How such cheerfuls me. Then someone boards, there's always somebody. Once woods hazed by the dells emeralded, that is, pasteled from a green rain. A lone hush had banished herd, no one for hours. Perfect, I thought, such garbo, until I saw someone afar, somebody by again. Cloister of a library's mum, the half-mute books rigided with what ceased hell, and worlds away of noise was thrill, as shunned when another entered, sat. Wouldn't you know? Somebody always, even in dreamt yawns from a shore's to escape, silented in a noon sequin shining in a rowboat bask, out on what enormous for a thirst beyond fullest sky, until a motorboat's distance appeared, always, always. So to go to Tibet's chill aloft within a cave's chapelled high in a lull from the earth as veil, for such garbo safe, useless, there'd be a somebody, a Tibetan, by and by. Thank you, Russell. And next up, we have the fabulous Daniel Gray-Kontar, who I'm very excited to hear.
Good evening. So before I start, I just want to tell a quick tale of two cities. I'm just fresh off returning from Detroit, where, among other things, it was my attempt to find the birthplace of what was called Boone House, which was launched in around 1961, 62, 63, and was the offshoot of a church called King Solomon Missionary Baptist. As I walked around the neighborhood, this really important place in Detroit of African American literary history, there was not a marker, there was not a skeleton of the house remaining. I was very sad that folks who should be mentioned and who can be mentioned and are mentioned alongside Russell Atkins, names like Robert Hayden and Dudley Randall and Naomi Long Madgett, there were no markers for that very important place in our literary history. And then, today, here I am in Karamu, in this place that is still standing and thriving. A celebration of this man who has a street named after him. There is a marker. And in this moment today, I am so very proud to be a Clevelander and to be in celebration of the work of a true Clevelander. Thank you. Thank you so much, Russell. So with that, some poems. I'm gonna read 3 poems that for me are about the noticing in place. Out of patients at the outpatient clinic. The lively soiled dishes pile the food carts with obstacle, the bedpans under in a clamor. The paraphernalia for oxygen rolls with grim. A patient looks bemoaned. It is now 4:00 p.m., and from the sheen of surgery sweep the wonders of medicine. Aloud, of voices. See you at 9. See you tomorrow, Steve. I'll let you know. Oh, Bill. From debt aloof, buying a farm near Oregon, or going to the Bahamas for the summer. Afar in an office, there's a laugh. Rehabilitation building entrance, 4:00. I was, say, bound for anywhere, anywhere at all, committed to more of above the worse, when many of them sick against broken up as from crash or a fate of birth, with paralytically askew limbs, came to sight, drastic, lo and behold. Where were both should be legs, nor for grasp his hands or hers of these, and one grislied, as in a kind of plasticated skin, came no to all living looks so bound for anywhere, anywhere committed to more above the worse, how to one's view sudden mishap, crooked, cruel, sharp, axed, as of monstrous vex. Then they were the miserable gone, the many of them, sick against broken, with things thus being loudly unspoken. New storefront. Afresh with paint, the shop had glare, chrome plated, the squared of for sale angles or with glamorous rounds. Auto supply company. The owner looked too outright, dart of a much refracted stare. Aluminum had set him blind a while, the false-going virtue of hope. No public interest anywhere about. His innocence among the smoke shops, the parlors of the barbecue, the bars and barber shops proliferous. All these dives without sheen and more secret, sinfully wised, merely glimmered. He dared their margins with silver. I now have the pleasure of introducing our next reader. Please welcome to the stage Robert E. McDonough.
Okay, I will read 3 of Russell's poems, and I'll give you the page number if you want to follow. Flew as an old war movie. They're the strategists. They first clamp off the food supply from the port. Heavy gunfire around the gut warehouse, like guards stabbed, one whipped cold with a gun butt. They seize the camouflaged rain radio, scrambling the signals. Anyway, signals can't get through. With flamethrowers, they close in and tight. While brainwaves burn, a crack lung team hits at breath. They reconnoiter, spraying the lobar regions. Cold gook from their chemical warfare division. They've got one objective: the big muscle center whose dynamos, huge pericardian masses, thunder until whack, light is out, electricity's out, something is out. Have you ever had a flu that interesting? On my photo, hasn't a chance, as if the face turns on him, and with crimes that he did not commit, unless there are the 2 of them, one who'd rob the local drugstore, strangle the widow who has the money. The way the rascal loves the camera, the garbled side of his features, then makes a break. He's damned clever, takes to the lens, then beats the rap. The innocent and modest one now faces a judgment for the other. That's the way, isn't it? That one shall take the blame? And finally, probability and birds. The probability in the yard. The rodent keeps the cat close by. The cat would sharp at the bird would waft to the water. If he does, he has but his times before. Whichever one he is, he's surely marked. The cat is variable. The rodent becomes the death of the bird, which we love. Dogs are random. And now please welcome Siaara Freeman.
Good evening. I would like to say thank you, Karamu, for having me. Every time I'm in this space, I'm reminded of how Cleveland and how Black I am, and there's nothing like that reminder. Also, I'm really grateful that Robert just read Probability in Birds. I was hesitant at first to share this poem. I had writer's block for a while. And when I received this book, I read Probability in Birds, and my writer's block broke immediately. I was able to come up with something. And so I'm actually gonna go ahead and share that poem because it feels like when Robert did it, I was supposed to do that poem. Also, thank you, Russell, because writer's block is terrible. It's horrible. It's called Probability and the Black Witching Hour. The probability in the Black Witching Hour. The Black girl keeps the sage close by. The sage will sedate the haints. The haints will recollect as kin. If you don't recognize their howl, your child will. The howl is variable. The child becomes the death of the howl for which we prayed in skin. Black is never random. Thank you. I also love poetry that makes me laugh. There's something very special about a writer that can write poems that make you laugh. This made me laugh. It's called Nothing Dependable. The changes of the year had been many. There'd been no snow, not yet. Do you suppose I spoke to a neighbor, there's going to be snow? She said, it's winter, isn't it? But I was not convinced. Calling, will there be much snow? You newspaper weathermen know everything. They said, no probability tonight. Was that exactly what I meant? Isn't it late? I said, seasonally? They hung up. Sure, they were hiding something. The mailman who brought the news, I laughed, but nervously. Still no snow? It can't stay that way. And he was gone without an inkling. In spite of all I sensed ominously that it was a critical year, that snow was in a trap somewhere between now and Armageddon, but no one, absolutely no one, knew. I love that. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I feel like I know things that people are like, they do not know that's happening right now, so that spoke to my spirit. And this one did too. It's called How Would I Come Upon a Corpse? And I immediately thought about Anthony Sowell and the serial killings in Cleveland. And so it really sat with me. How would I come upon a corpse on recent occurrences in Cleveland? How would I come upon a corpse with a look, what's here for God's sake? How would I profoundly mystery hollows who hushed as if, sorry, am I intruding? Or come upon a corpse in a bed, first incredibly, then lights, sudden, a gas, crash, start, horror around, askew, no, hardly. I'd ash the sense mum as overwhelmed long overtakes me. And then finally, Imaginary Crimes in a Real Garden. Because I just think that title is brilliant. Imaginary Crimes in a Real Garden. A spring already short of breath, on its way to an asthma summer. I gather allergic grass and shrubs, roots sterile from last year, no rainfall to help them, no hope from water. Useless, beseeched by boughs, a blueberry bush, axing, pleading, faggots in a bunch, their necks snap of twig necks, crunch, thick earth between the hands, against knuckles, a fat man squeeze, trachea, a bold woman's fetus, a shape of a female twig, break her slow, painful scream of rape, a feminine squirming. I shove them down, bind the bag with a short wire. This is the kill. Thank you. I'm not used to introducing people, but I am supposed to introduce the phenomenal Julie Patton, who will be accompanied by Arcey Harton and Paul Van Kuren on guitar. So give it up.
Good evening. Paul Van Kuren, Arcey Harton couldn't make it today, so I will double for him. I grew up in this place. I can recall being in the sculpture studio. When I was 5 years old, my head was used for the, they needed models all the time. I remember, I think I was 12 and I got paid $5 per gig. And it was a pretty dynamic place. And one of the things that the spirit of the place right now reminds me is how places survive, projects like this survive over time, and what the original visions are. And listening to a lot of the poets reading these beautiful interpretations, I remember that the vision is reflected in Russell's work. It was the diversity of the city, and if you cut across race and look at class, you see a bunch of flowers burgeoning here, right here. It felt like the United Nations. I also remember, because I grew up in Glenville, and my mother, Virgie Ezell Patton, grew up here when she was a child, just around the corner. It would be great if a street was named after her, come to think of it. But be that as it may, I remember being outside on the stoop when the word black arrived at our doorsteps. Before that, there were any number of names which you can imagine. And I always wondered who settled that question. And it takes courage to say, as a people, as a world, in relation to all the other creatures and creaturely writings, because all is language.
how inconvenient these terms are in relation to a broader vision, and as Black and as specific, and broke down the infrastructure of this city became over time, over the course of Russell Atkins' life. We remember the promise of how our humanity may transcend these blockadences. And with that in mind, I'm going to jump around, go between speaking and thinking, on and off the page. Here's to spirits are embodied here. Primer should have seen the lake today. Water so still, almost as the sky conjured up a mirror to see itself. Birds shucking and jiving off a sudden encounter with themselves. Take off on notes, inked in conversations, silhouette, mother-daughter, tit for tat, and peekaboo. And guess who blew in interview you. What kind of blue you use to get water, mama? Watercolor, or the color of water? Water as in wet, error, H2O, oil or watercolor. In the medium, blue depends on the subject matter. Blue is the subject, but doesn't the medium matter? Mutter, no, not really. Let's see, blue, well, take that blue over there. Watercolor is a carrier of water. Probably add white to vary the tones. Probably blue. Your favorite tone is down. To get that blue, you could almost use cobalt blue, pure, except to vary the tones. Ultramarine too, that's even darker, yes, but still a truish hue. The blue you use depends on other colors in the painting. Yes, the rest of the image determines which blue varies from moment to moment. Cobalt, ultramarine, cerulean has a tinge of green, but there are other blues I could use. Primarily of all the blues, most things I do seem to call for that kind of blue. Very true to me as a medium, it's a blue. You mean a medium bloom in time you move to blue, because water at a distance gets darker or lighter, just add streaks. I use that blue for figures, apply it to a probable cause. Yes, I do all the time, especially black figures. I've done figures using blue for the undertones, because dark skin, when you look at them, people tend to have more green in their skin and blacks and blue, but sometimes there's blue in their skin too. A hue blue in their skin too. Lest you use blue to get black, depending on the intensity of the light surrounding things. Sometimes I add a little bit, well, when I use the blues, even if it's of mixed colors, I put a bit of black in it to bring it down, gray the blue or blue the gray, otherwise use orange. It's opposite for changing blues to gray the blues. Arrive at the right tone, then go after value. The darker you pit a bit of black or umber, don't have to be. Of object, abject, listen, full. Here in the newspaper, record the eastbound by the lawns and Pell Swain. What a farce for me who nears divinely that squat figure that comes with concern. Who has so much concern? See, but wait for someone bringing some meaning, rain between my walls where woe be gone and ash cans of misery and the probability in the yard, divine these sensuous juxtapositions, encouraging, discouraging, the characters, conclusion. It's all souls. And a cream of light on a plane, by shadowy streets, you find the world's pulse, but so thank you. Paul, thank you. The guitar, Karamu in the air, and you people on chairs. Thank you. Russell, how does it feel? Oh, thank you. Where Russell and Mr. Atkins, right here. I have to talk directly to you because this is for you, and thank you so much for your work. I'm so honored
to be here. I am going to read 3 of your poems, and I'm going to read, after each poem of yours, I'm going to read a poem that I wrote in response to your poem. So I turned myself into an observer and I made myself reflect. So first we're going to start on page 140 for those of you who have the book. And this is Now Sweet Kathy. Now Sweet Kathy is pouring beer here in a bar, pouring beer in a bar where hard workers are. Endure cost her dreams fewer. Kathy with promoted bust is mature. Kathy, cease now in yielding of honey, is dedicated to her baby and steady money. Kathy, I shall cruel, you will old, you will woe, and beer obnoxious grows, hard workers drear. Kathy, Kathy, she's too mature to hear, could I but whisper in her ear. Reality's is but is alone. We confected a body for the bones. So here I am in 2019, placing myself inside of a bar. I went to the Touch of Italy in Shaker Heights, and this is titled Late Shift at the Touch of Italy. By now, the men have ordered their 3rd round of Remy, and I see the liquor in their eyes. They stare, then wink, then tip. Slim, fine woman slides a bill into the smart jukebox for some Meg the Stallion. It is a hot girl summer, and I am drained from these songs, but dedicated to this money. Me with my promoted bust, I pour beer after beer. They beg me to dance. I twerk a bit, smirk a bit. I will not ode, I will not woe. I will not ode, I will not woe. Next is on page 166. Spring's generation gap. It takes evening a long time to arrive. It feebles, slow old man still trying to hold down a job, decrepit, forced to move fast, janitor of the above offices. He replaces things that were used, puts them in special dark corners, closes shadows into spaces like doors, straightens, covers until all seems gone. Just before a youthful day comes to work demanding, "Hey Dad, where the hell is everything?" So that made me think about the women in my family and how they all had this very particular way of cleaning. So this is called The Women in My Family All Clean the Same. They swear it'll bring back the dead. They mix water, sunlight, and white vinegar to clean their mirrors. They use newspaper to wipe their glass tables. They sprinkle baking soda on their pillows. They clean before the street lights come on. They iron their bed sheets on the highest setting. They call it spirit cleansing. They scrub their toilets and tubs with flathead toothbrushes. They promise it sharpens your memory. They wipe down their walls once a week. They splash a pinch of apple cider vinegar in their laundry. They gargle with peroxide and salt to whiten their teeth. They insist it brings in money. They sweep with wooden brooms. They hand wash their bras and panties. They keep their cleaning supplies in special dark corners. They wash their floors with string mops. They polish their furniture with elbow grease. They train their children to throw that mess away. They blast Anita Baker. They believe filth causes headaches. They never ever wear gloves. So my last poem is after Late Bus, which is on page 100. Late Bus. Thefts hour. The bus against the hark lights of fright from houses. The dark men bored, laughing, their teeth crooked, and take a seat in back. Two men in jeans, jackets. The streets are deserted. The bus blunders or bounced. We wait. The men sit still. One talks to the other. Yeah, their eyes. Sure, we know what's up. One feigns a wild asleep. One coughs quickly as a signal while the other holds. Now, watch their pockets. Their hands are moving. One as for a cigarette and one as if finding matches. He reaches up, falsely to pull the bell cord. East 55. They leave the bus. It makes no difference. Four dark men bored, laughing. So I got on the bus and tried to put myself as an observer, as a poet. And thank you, Mr. Atkins, so much for your work. It has inspired me, and I am, again, just so honored to be here reading before you. Riding the 14. Right.
It had to be the 14.
I live off of Kinsman. Little homie warns me about riding the 14. Says his mama used to drive that route and she saw all kinds of things, and I tell him that's perfect because I'm trying to write a poem about riding the bus, and I want to see all kinds of things even a woman shouldn't see. But when I board, way before thefts hour, the bus is quiet and empty as a box. I take a seat in back behind a boy in a pink and purple fatigue do-rag. I stare at the nosy single braid poking out of his do-rag as if it wants to say hello. When we ride past 144th, I can't help but think about the 4 new bodies they found in a bando, and then 2 young girls board the bus. One girl is rocking a small afro and a pair of bamboo earrings with the word baddie sliced through the center. She carries a copy of the autobiography of Assata Shakur, and now everything feels all right. And by the time I take my eyes off her and the book, at least half a dozen of students have boarded, and everybody seems to possess something purple, a pair of headphones, a hoodie, or a jacket. The students sit still, glued to their phones, and I think about my little homie's warning and realize I'm on at the wrong hour. Thank you. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing Phil Matches.
Good evening, everybody. You don't remember me, but I came to visit you. It was a beautiful time. I'd like to read Nun's Picture for those of you in your, with the hymnals, page 141. Nun's Picture. Open morning, and the nun bends flowing, bears garden breakfast. Flowers famish up. She pours sunlit water so sheen as if milk richly still out of a pitcher. Out of a picture, out of a picture, out of a picture, out of a picture. This is abstractive. For some reason, and I know this has nothing to do with it, but maybe it does, this poem made me think of the foreclosure disaster that struck Cleveland in around 2008 and afterwards. I'm thinking about all the families who lost their homes and whose neighborhoods changed, so abstractive. I came upon that gate that traceried gently into open. There lay the sum of the dearest once belonging, the memoried that scattered then compilingly lengthed into that poor pale. No place to bring one's birth, this hill they let run down among them where the scant droops to astray with dearths. The one and one of 4 or 10 even and seldom whisked across, listened into grass, there where only as a gray amount coming on with swerve, solemns far, whole family again, my dear ones. So thanks Carol for organizing, thanks Kevin for this good work, and everyone else who helped, and Robert, and everyone else who put this together, Julie, everyone. When Carol asked us what poems we'd like to read, I jumped on this one, digitally jumped. It's called Night and a Distant Church, and I think one of the things I love about Russell's poems is that they aspire and sometimes reach to music. So I love the fact that we've had music in this, and I cannot do this justice, so I'm just going to try. Night and a Distant Church. There's about 4 versions. Forward, abrupt, up and wind, upon the wind, into the wind, rain now and again, the wind, bells, 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 bells. Thank you. And now please welcome the author of the foreword of this book, Janice A. Lowe.
Good evening, everyone. It's so great to be here. When Mr. Atkins and I greeted each other in the hallway, he said, I grew up here, and he seemed so excited to be here, and we have that in common. We didn't talk about that last year when we met ahead of me writing the foreword, but I have so many fond memories of seeing theater here and all kinds of productions and dance and the arts. Mr. Atkins is a multidisciplinary artist, and that's a clunky word, multidisciplinary. Hybrid, interdisciplinary, to be that takes years and years and years of dedicated study. And in speaking with Mr. Atkins, he shared with me some of that interaction with composers and musicians in this area, even debates. And I was cheered thinking about, oh, there was a time when folks could disagree about stuff and still be friends. So that kind of intellectual rigor and humanism is also part of Mr. Atkins' legacy with his colleagues, his friendships, his editing, his publishing, his writing, and also his work as a composer. I'm going to play a piano work entitled Objects that's dedicated to his great friend and colleague and co-editor at Freelance, Adelaide Simon.
Oh, wow. That was really beautiful. How about another round of applause for all of our And now, most importantly, a round of applause for Russell Atkins. Thank you all so much for coming out. Before I let you go off into the evening, I'll mention that if you don't have a copy of the book, there are still some left in the lobby, and I believe that Russell will stick around for just a little bit to say hi and to maybe sign a couple of copies of his book as well. And so thank you and good night, and we hope to see you at the rest of Cleveland Book Week events. Thanks.